the way the youth sports industry, because it's an industry now, folks, has changed over the last several years, and the socioeconomical ramifications it has had is going to create several problems for both youth sports and then all the way up to the NCAA when athletes are good enough to play in college sports. I was reading interesting articles from the Washington Post and Time Magazine, one of them, the Washington Post one from Jacob Bogage. This one's from September 2017, so only a couple months ago. And then the Time one being from Sean Gregory, August of 2017. So that one, several months, little less than a year ago, about how the youth sports participation has been declining and how it's become a $15 billion industry. We're talking about youth sports here. We're not talking about, professional or college athletics. This is youth sports. When I hear terms like travel, club, AAU, I think that they're all responsible for this dramatic shift and dramatic negative ramifications that have been brought upon in the sporting world. I think that the travel club AAU organizations, a lot of them are great, but I think they've hurt a large majority of the sporting world, mostly for the youth athletes out there who just want to play. You look back 20 years ago, Jake, 10 years ago even in some cases, our parents or just people who are not really that much older than us when they were growing up, just pony leagues, in-house leagues, recreational leagues. Their best players were playing in that when they were kids. Growing up, they were playing in all these in-house leagues. They didn't have to travel all over
right
the
in
place.
their backyard.
Right in their backyards,
right
exactly.
In their backyard.
Organized youth athletic programs that were done right in their own backyard. But that has certainly changed, and it has changed for the absolute worst. And it's going to create such a problem. And Jake, do you know who's going to be the most disadvantaged through all this?
High school athletics. It's not even close.
That's part of it.
It's a big part of it.
And if you dive even deeper into that, the demographic of it, the underprivileged, the families that earn less income, they're not going to be able to sign their kids up for sports because according to the Washington Post here, the article I read, it was almost 45% of children 6 to 12 played a team sport on a regular basis in 2008. Now it's only to about 37% of children. This was as of September of 2017. So a lot of people think that this philosophy has to do with a lot of kids are looking around saying, maybe I'm just not as good. So-and-so, Timmy's playing travel league. He's playing, AAU, and he's traveling all over the place. Maybe this sport isn't good enough maybe I'm not good enough for this sport anyway. So what's the point that I even do this? What's the point of even wasting my time involved in this team sport, even though it's only a recreational league? There's no point. I think kids are starting to figure out that they can't hang with the best at a younger age, and that's really a sad thing because that wasn't always the case. You could very well play these in-house leagues and these recreational leagues and still find a way onto high school teams. But I know living in a bigger area with bigger high schools around us, if you don't play travel baseball
or travel
if you don't
sports
play travel anything and you plan on trying out for that sport, good luck. There's very few. Good luck, because there's very few kids. I'm not saying you can't work hard.
There's a couple of outliers, but the majority of kids that are playing these high school sports, they're from big travel programs and AAU teams, all that fun stuff.
And it's really sad to see because that will certainly affect high school sports. It already is. You're gonna start to see. I know, Jake, having experience playing for Waubonsie Valley here, our high school, terrific high school, great baseball program, great athletic program in general, I know we can both say. Having played my freshman and sophomore year, you played for 4 years, 2 on varsity. I think that there's a lot of kids whose focus and a lot of teammates was more so geared towards their tournament teams or their travel teams as opposed to the regular high school baseball that was to be played. And I think given that shift and given that philosophy by a lot of the players and a lot of the players' parents, because they're the ones paying and they're the ones making the decision.
They're footing the bill.
They are, and they're the ones largely responsible for this. They are responsible for this in my mind. But I think that you're going to see a drop-off. I really do. The next 20 years, it'll surprise me to see the number. It won't surprise me, I should say. But don't be surprised to see the numbers rapidly decline in terms of participation involved directly in high school sports. And if there aren't enough participants on certain teams, football, baseball, basketball, whatever it is, then those prices will probably drive up, and the cost to actually participate in the high school sport through the high school will probably skyrocket because there's just not as many people doing it. And more kids will probably just refuse to play high school altogether and focus on these travel club, AAU teams, whatever it is, for whatever sport. And it's just something that I feel like nobody's talking about, and I feel like we should, because this is going to affect the sports industry forever, because these travel club and AAU programs and organization, 7-on-7 for football, they're not going away. Heck, look at a league like 7-on-7 or a sport like football with 7-on-7, where you're seeing people who don't want to play football because of how physical it is and the concussion issues that it provides. You have these skill positions who get to do all this 7-on-7 stuff, and it's only the skill positions. It's really nobody else. But it wouldn't shock me if some of these high school players just opt to do that, because there's coaches that in college who are directly recruiting off of 7-on-7
and having communication and dialogue with a lot of these athletes too.
Which
That's
is
a big
so
part of it.
surprising to me, because as a football fan and a football observer, I don't know how somebody could possibly be evaluated in a physical and physically demanding sport like football, be evaluated in shorts and a t-shirt. I just don't understand that. I haven't talked to enough people who do 7-on-7 to necessarily understand it. But I don't see how coaches could directly recruit, college coaches or any coach could directly recruit or show interest in a high school athlete based on 7-on-7
or
drill.
for that matter, any travel league. And I think that you made up a really good point where it stems from, the parents and a lot of some of these travel coaches kind of, we just see it from a lot of the level of intensity that has come from 8U, 9U, 10U, these young ages now who are now playing travel sports. Just the intensity of the parents and the coaches. It's had to have kicked up like times 100, I think, from where it was.
Well,
just 20 years ago.
Just Google the average income of or what people spend on their kids playing travel sports.
It's
it
a
is
lot
insane.
now.
It's a lot of money. There's a lot of money in youth sports.
These parents will do just about anything to try and get their kids to, to maximize their athletic potential. And for that matter, I think that a lot of travel coaches, I think they try and sell that the best.
Absolutely.
Like if you don't pay this, then your kid's not going to make high school
but
and
in a
beyond.
sad way, it's true.
In a sad way, it's true now. It's become such a big animal that it's hard to be the little guy playing in recreational leagues, maybe just right in your backyard, and as talented as you could be, I think you are looked down for not playing travel ball or any of that stuff. But I know this comes off as a little hypocritical because we played travel ball for many years, but
we had great experiences. Like, I loved traveling, and we were lucky enough to have that. It was a privilege, pretty much, to go around and play with those guys.
The thing that was different, though, is that it's scary that a lot of athletes in high school, they continue to stick with their travel teams once they already make high school. I always thought that the goal of playing a travel sport or any travel athletics in general was to kind of step up your game before you enter the high school level of athletics. But now guys just seem to be more committed to that time than maybe the high school stuff, but
It
it's
was
interesting.
it was all about preparing yourself for the next thing as an athlete. If you were in travel, you would prepare yourself for high school. If you were in high school, you wanted to prepare your game. A lot of athletes who really wanted to stick with it would prepare their game and get better and prepare themselves to potentially play in college. College, same thing. College to pros. That's how it works. But you're not seeing that now, is my point. You're gonna see a lot of kids and a lot of families make the decision to just not even think about high school athletics. There already are probably several families across the country that already are, or parents who are keeping their kids from doing high school and just saying focus on travel.
LeVar Ball.
That's a pretty good example. You're gonna see that. It's not even really. It's not the kid's fault. That's my point. But it just pains me because it's going to hurt the kids who aren't as lucky and who don't have as much money. These lower income families are gonna get hurt.
But listen, there are some outliers because if you have an incredibly athletic kid, I think that there are
For sure.
there are
For
people
sure.
that are willing to foot the bill and involve these kids in travel sports and
You have that, but I'm saying like things like hoop dreams. That was the big thing, 80s, 90s, maybe even early 2000s. You know, if you were in poverty areas and you were in areas that were disadvantaged or uh lower income, playing basketball was almost considered your ticket out, or playing a sport was almost your ticket out of those areas, whether it be economically or anything like that. But that has changed because a lot of these lower income families, they just don't have the money to have their kids develop the skills to get better and better. Whereas these lower income kids, they could have been the best from when they were starting in these recreational leagues like 20 years ago, like I just mentioned. But that's just not the case now because you can't play if you don't pay. You can't play if you don't pay. And that's really the biggest issue that I have with all of this. But travel baseball, a lot of people heck, we had a ton of tournaments that were labeled as exposure tournaments on college campuses at college baseball fields when we were 7th, 8th grade, which was way too early. And then high school, mainly high school, probably freshman year. But how many times did you see these college recruiters or scouts? I didn't see any of them at any of my exposure
very
tournaments.
limited amount.
Like if you're good enough, they'll find you. And the kids don't realize, and the parents sure as hell don't realize that either. It's just going to be really interesting, and it's interesting to see literally very few people are concerned about it. I'm very amazed at how the IHSA, they don't talk about, I mean, maybe they can't, like what is there to say? It's not their fault. They can't really do anything to stop these organizations from taking over. I'm just saying that this is going to be the future, and I think it could be a very unpleasant and unfortunate one for a lot of people in the sports industry and sports community.
Well, heck, you read articles. I think it was not too long ago I read an article of like some young kid who was in 6th or 7th grade. He was like a quarterback. There were already articles and scholarship offers out there for him. Like, when will we learn to slow down on this kind of stuff?
Never. It's never going to change now.
It's become toxic, and
So-
I just think it's bad for young athletes to get involved in all this mess that was probably created by the parents trying to maximize their kids' athletic potential that they probably never had growing up themselves, but they're jealous of them. That's what it stems from.
So where I'm getting at to all of this, as I mentioned there, the NCAA, when I first started this segment, was youth sports has become a business too, and it's become a very, very rich business. $15 billion, probably a little over that now. So if you're going to complain about one thing, just be conscious of the other. That's all. And then it'll also have a huge effect on high school sports. I think it could completely eliminate them too. At least eliminate a lot of the popular ones, baseball, basketball, football. You might not see that. Soccer too, that's a big thing. Those club or
Or the best,
travel
the very
organizations.
best athletes won't be playing in their high schools. They'll opt out and
In a
play
lot of sports, that's
travel.
already the
It's
case.
already
too.
happening,
And
it's trending that way too.
and if you don't have the best players playing, then it's just going to be really different. High school sports, the whole landscape around it is going to be vastly different from what it is now. So if you're in high school or, you just got through high school, I would say enjoy it and be grateful for it because it's going to change. There's no doubt about that. And AAU travel club, I think all of them are a little bit responsible for it. Not a little, a lot. They're largely responsible for the decline you're going to see in youth sports and then high school sports.